begins with a calmness that almost feels strange when you look back at it later. At that time, Earth was just moving through its normal routine. People were busy with work, school, travel, or simply trying to make it through the day. No one had any idea that something unusual had already started far away from the world. In a quiet monitoring station built high in the mountains, a small group of workers kept watch over the deep space signals that usually meant nothing. Most of the time, they only saw natural radio waves from distant stars or harmless background noise from space. It was routine work, long shifts, soft humming computers, and static-filled screens. One evening, when most people were preparing dinner or relaxing after a long day, the team at the station noticed something strange. At first, it didn't look like anything special, just a repeated flicker in the data. A technician thought it might be another equipment glitch, the kind they saw all the time. The weather was cold. The wind outside the station windows kept pushing against the glass, and everyone wanted the shift to end. But something about those signals didn't feel normal. They weren't random. They came in a pattern. Not a smooth pattern like nature usually produces, and not the kind caused by a broken antenna. It felt deliberate, almost like someone was tapping out a message. One of the analysts leaned closer to the screen, watching the repeating bursts of soundless energy. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, trying to understand whether he was imagining it or not. He replayed the data again and again until he finally called the others over. Within minutes, everyone in the room was staring at the same lines of repeating signals. They tried adjusting the machines, resetting the system, and checking the sensors. Nothing changed. The signals kept coming strong and steady from far beyond the solar system. This wasn't normal space noise. It looked organized, almost like coded communication. But who or what could send something like that? The team reported the anomaly through the official channels. Usually, when strange signals were found, it took days or even weeks to get a response. This time, the reply came within minutes. Higher officials told them to continue recording everything and to avoid talking about it with anyone outside their department. It didn't take long for the news to spread quietly among scientific groups, but no one wanted to cause panic. For now, it remained a silent mystery dot. As the days passed, the signals grew stronger. They changed rhythm sometimes, creating new sequences. Some researchers thought they might be mathematical codes. Others suspected some kind of propulsion noise from an unknown spacecraft. But no theory fit perfectly. The strangest part was the direction they were coming from, a region of space that had always been empty. No planets, no stars close enough to generate regular emissions, no history of unusual readings. It made the entire situation more unsettling. Countries around the world held small private meetings, trying to understand whether the signals meant danger or discovery. The public had no idea what was happening. Life continued as if the world wasn't being watched from somewhere far away. Meanwhile, astronomers using powerful telescopes began noticing something else. In deep space, barely visible and extremely faint, were large shapes moving slowly. At first, they thought these were asteroids or distant objects drifting through space. But they were too uniform, too smooth. Asteroids were messy, uneven, shaped by millions of years of collisions and drifting dust. These objects looked structured, almost built. The more they observed them, the more they felt a strange sense of dread. The shapes moved in perfect formation, something nature never does on its own. The objects were far away, but their direction pointed straight toward Earth's general region of space. The scientists didn't jump to conclusions. They tried everything to explain it logically. Could these be long-lost satellites? Could they be reflections or shadows of something else? Even the most creative explanations failed. The objects were getting closer, and they were huge, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. bigger than any space station or known craft in human history. Soon, more of these shapes appeared, lined up like a quiet fleet moving through darkness. The world's governments received private reports, and the conversations grew tense. Some leaders believed the objects might be part of a natural event that had never been seen before. Others feared something far worse, that these were ships, and that whoever sent them was unbelievably advanced. Inside the monitoring station, the workers felt both excitement and fear. They tried to act normal, but every hour brought new data that showed the same thing. Something intelligent was out there, and it was drawing nearer. The team argued about possibilities. Some thought this could be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. Others worried that the signals weren't a greeting. They might be strategic communication used by a military force preparing for something unknown. Deep down, even without proof, everyone felt the same quiet thought forming. These signals were not friendly. A few news outlets began noticing strange increases in government secrecy. Satellites were being repositioned, more aircraft were in the sky, and global communication networks were being quietly reinforced. Journalists tried to ask questions, but officials gave vague answers about technical adjustments and routine maintenance. Nobody wanted the public to panic without full information, but panic was not the real concern. The real concern was the unknown. Something was approaching Earth, something enormous, organized, and silent. And humanity didn't know whether it was peaceful or dangerous. Night after night, the signals continued, becoming clearer as the mysterious objects moved closer. Some parts of the world experienced minor disruptions, static in radio channels, temporary outages in long-range communication networks. These things were brushed off as normal technical issues because no one wanted to believe they were connected. One night, as the staff monitored the screens, the pattern changed again. This time, it was different. Short bursts followed by long pauses, like someone was testing or recalibrating. Nobody understood it, but everyone felt uneasy. The analyst who first noticed the signals whispered that it almost felt like the senders were adjusting their approach as if they were preparing for something. The team sent the new data to global agencies. Within hours, governments around the world held emergency meetings. Intelligence reports, gathered from different countries, all showed the same shapes, the same direction, the same timing. Everything pointed to a single conclusion. The objects were not drifting. They were traveling with purpose. While the public slept peacefully, unaware of the silent movements in the sky, experts hunted for answers. They tried to decode the signals, reading them from every angle, but nothing made sense. If it was communication, it was far beyond human understanding. If it was a warning, it was impossible to interpret. The truth, however, was slowly becoming impossible to ignore. The signals were not asking for peace, not asking for language exchange, and not announcing friendship. They behaved like strategic patterns, like military signals being exchanged between units. But no one wanted to say it out loud. Still, the world watched as the objects continued their slow, steady journey toward Earth. They were too far away for the public to see, too quiet for ordinary people to notice, but close enough for scientists to feel the weight of something historic and possibly dangerous. Approaching. And in that quiet tension, when Earth still believed it was alone and safe, the first step of a much larger story had already begun. As the mysterious objects slowly approached Earth, people remained unaware of the danger lurking above. Life on the planet carried on as normal. Cities glimmered with lights at night. Cars moved steadily on highways. Children played in parks. And millions of people were busy trying to live ordinary lives. Yet high above, unseen by human eyes, massive ships drifted closer with quiet precision. The signals that scientists had been observing were no longer just patterns. They were now accompanied by something far more ominous, movement that seemed deliberate. Almost threatening. At first, governments tried to prepare quietly. Military bases were placed on alert. Satellites were shifted into higher orbits, and radar stations all over the world increased their monitoring. There was no public announcement because the truth was too alarming. Even among officials, there was no agreement on what these objects meant. Some believed they were explorers, perhaps observing from a distance before making contact. Others feared the worst, that these were advanced war machines coming to conquer, and humanity might not have any real defense. Communication attempts began quietly. Scientists and diplomats, using encrypted channels, tried sending messages into space. They chose simple phrases, greetings, peaceful intentions, offers of dialogue. Days passed, and the only response was silence. But that silence carried a weight heavier than any words. Something was moving toward Earth, and it ignored all attempts at contact. Then, strange things began to happen. In some remote regions, communication satellites experienced brief but severe disruptions. Ships in the ocean reported compass malfunctions. Radar systems went blank for short periods. No one could explain these interruptions. They were subtle enough that ordinary people didn't notice, but experts watching closely realized the pattern could not be accidental. It was almost as if the approaching fleet was testing Earth's defenses, probing to see how strong they were. The first real sight of the objects came to a small team of astronomers when the fleet entered the edge of the solar system. Using the most advanced telescopes available, they watched as enormous, sleek shapes appeared against the backdrop of stars. Unlike anything humanity had ever seen, these objects were perfectly symmetrical and moved as though guided by intelligence. They formed lines, grids, and patterns, rearranging themselves in ways that suggested tactical planning. The astronomers realized with a chill that these were not natural objects drifting in space. They were deliberately organized, like a military fleet moving in formation. Panic slowly spread through the world's top military leaders. Conventional weapons seemed meaningless against something so advanced. Fighter jets would not survive in such high-speed, energy-controlled space environments. Missiles and bombs could not reach them. Satellite defense systems could be scrambled in moments by technology humanity could not yet comprehend. It became clear that if these objects had hostile intent, Earth would be extremely vulnerable. The first unprovoked act of hostility came. Quietly, yet unmistakably. Satellites in multiple orbits began losing contact with ground stations, some completely disappearing from radar. Communications in remote regions went down for hours at a time. Electrical grids in certain countries experienced unusual fluctuations. Nothing exploded, nothing crashed. But it was enough to send a warning. The fleet could interfere with humanity's infrastructure with ease. Governments realized they were dealing with an intelligence far superior to their own. For ordinary citizens, life went on without interruption. People went to work, children went to school, and stores opened and closed. No one saw the silent threat hovering above. But in command centers around the globe, the tension was nearly unbearable. Military advisors argued over what could be done. Some suggested trying to strike first, but no weapon on Earth could match the alien technology. Others argued for negotiation, yet no reply had ever come. Every suggestion felt both urgent and hopeless. Then came the first undeniable proof that these objects had hostile intent. From orbit, several alien ships deployed energy waves that disabled communication hubs on Earth. Satellites stopped working, planes were grounded, and long-range military radars were blinded. The lights in some cities flickered, an emergency. Backup systems kicked in. Panic spread among officials because it proved that the fleet was not just observing. They were testing, probing, and showing their dominance. Humanity was suddenly in a position of extreme vulnerability. At the same time, scientists studying the original signals noticed something alarming. The patterns had changed. What had once seemed like a neutral or observational signal now appeared. Aggressive, almost like instructions being sent to the ships themselves. Analysts hypothesized that the fleet was sharing real-time tactical information, adapting to Earth's defenses, and preparing for something larger. It was a chilling thought. Every move humanity made could be anticipated before it happened. In the first public reports of unusual events, news outlets struggled to explain what was happening. Headlines mentioned satellite malfunctions, unexplained power surges, and strange electrical interference, but they did not mention the approaching fleet. Even as governments quietly scrambled, the public remained unaware of the scale of the danger. People continued commuting, shopping, and sleeping peacefully, completely oblivious to the silent shadow that now loomed over their planet. Meanwhile, within the global military command, debates turned heated. Could humanity launch a defensive strike? Could an organized evacuation of critical areas work? Was it even possible to contact these visitors and hope for a peaceful resolution? No one had answers. Every conventional method that had worked in past crises seemed utterly useless. The fleet had technology beyond comprehension, speed and coordination unmatched by any human system, and intelligence that could anticipate human tactics. Despite this, the human spirit did not surrender. Teams of scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked day and night to understand the fleet's patterns and predict its movements. They studied the signals obsessively, looking for weaknesses or patterns that could provide an opening. Every small discovery brought hope, even if it was tempered with fear. Humanity was facing a threat unlike anything in its history, and for the first time, it realized that survival would require every ounce of intelligence, courage, and cooperation it could muster. The fleet moved closer, gradually entering the outer edges of Earth's orbital space. Its ships were massive, enormous beyond imagination, but strangely quiet. There was no sound, no visible engines or exhaust, just shapes that glided silently, perfectly coordinated. Observers compared it to a massive shadow creeping across the sky, invisible to the naked eye, but impossible to ignore through instruments. Then, without warning, the fleet made its first visible move toward action. Small alien craft detached from the main vessels and positioned themselves near key satellite arrays, military bases, and communication hubs. Their purpose was clear. They were disabling humanity's ability to see, hear, and respond. It was not random. It was strategic. This confirmed the worst fear that humanity had been secretly carrying. The fleet was not here to explore, observe, or communicate. It had a purpose, and that purpose might be domination or destruction. Despite the fear, there were sparks of courage. Military teams began organizing emergency responses. Scientists brainstormed unconventional solutions, and engineers worked on backup systems. The human side of the story was about ordinary people suddenly asked to rise to extraordinary challenges. Communications officers worked around the clock. Technicians repaired satellites under extreme conditions, and scientists tried decoding the signals with the hope that a breakthrough could give humanity an edge. For the first time, the world began to glimpse the reality of an intelligence far beyond its own. The fleet was not just a threat, it was a test. Every move, every signal, every interference suggested that these beings were evaluating human capabilities. And yet, humanity persisted, unwilling to give up, driven by the instinct to survive and protect the planet. The night when the first alien interference directly caused temporary blackout in several cities was a turning point. Citizens noticed flickering lights, sudden phone outages, and brief confusion, but they had no idea why. Emergency response teams worked tirelessly to restore order. Meanwhile, scientists and military experts realized that conventional defense systems were entirely inadequate. It was a bitter truth. Humanity had never faced anything like this, and conventional knowledge would not be enough. Still, hope was not lost. In quiet research labs and underground command centers, a plan began to take shape. While conventional weapons were useless, the very existence of the fleet suggested a possible approach. Intelligence, adaptability, and teamwork might be humanity's true weapons. Someone somewhere would need to find a way to fight back. World was on the edge of an unknown conflict. While ordinary life went on above the surface, below and in secret, a new kind of preparation had begun. Humanity's leaders, scientists, and soldiers realized that the fleet would not wait forever. Every hour mattered. Every calculation could determine survival. Every decision would shape the first confrontation in what could become the largest conflict in human history. And so the stage was set. Earth was no longer a distant, passive observer of the universe. As the alien fleet hovered closer to Earth, humanity's defenses were put to the ultimate test. Ordinary military operations, the ones humans had trained for their entire lives, suddenly felt meaningless. Fighter jets, submarines, and missile systems, everything designed to defend the planet, struggled to even operate. Satellites that monitored weather, communications, and enemy movement went offline one by one, leaving vast portions of the planet blind. In some places, electrical grids flickered and shut down temporarily. Nothing catastrophic happened yet, but the message was clear. The fleet's technology was far beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. Command centers around the world were filled with tension. Military leaders barked orders, analysts crunched numbers, and technicians worked at a frantic pace to restore basic systems. Nothing seemed to work. Missiles aimed at the fleet stopped mid-flight. Drones lost connection. Even the most advanced jets experienced sudden electrical failures, forcing them to land. Every defense system seemed to fail the moment it was tested. Scientists and engineers, who were normally behind the scenes, suddenly found themselves at the center of a global crisis. They studied the fleet's movements, trying to find a pattern, a weakness, or some signal that might reveal a vulnerability. They watched as the alien ships moved with perfect coordination, their formations shifting smoothly and efficiently. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Each time humans tried to respond, the fleet adapted immediately, neutralizing the attempt. The more they observed, the more they realized that this was not just a show of power, it was a demonstration of complete mastery over space and technology. Meanwhile, ordinary people around the world began noticing small but disturbing effects. Communications went down for hours in certain areas. Flights were canceled because air traffic control systems were disrupted. In a few remote towns, people saw strange lights moving across the night sky. No one could explain what they were, and those who reported them were often met with disbelief. While the general public remained largely unaware of the scale of the threat, those on the front lines, scientists, military personnel, and government officials knew that humanity was facing a crisis unlike any before. In one command center, a group of strategists and analysts gathered around a holographic map of Earth and the approaching fleet. Their discussion was tense, filled with urgency and fear. One officer, with hands trembling over the controls, spoke of launching a preemptive strike, but it was quickly dismissed. "It's useless," said another. "They neutralize anything we send. Missiles, drones, even satellites. We can't touch them." The room fell silent. The reality was terrifying. Humanity had never faced an opponent capable of disabling their technology so efficiently. Meanwhile, scientists continued to analyze the fleet's signals. They noticed subtle changes, like the aliens were studying human responses in real time. Every attempt to communicate, every defensive maneuver, was being observed and countered almost immediately. It became painfully clear that the fleet was Not just powerful, it was intelligent, capable of anticipating and adapting to human actions. Despite the overwhelming odds, humans did not give up. Engineers worked frantically to design backup systems, even improvising solutions that would normally seem impossible. Communication specialists created alternative networks, relying on old technology that the fleet's systems could not immediately detect or interfere with. Soldiers trained in unconventional tactics prepared for scenarios that were previously considered unimaginable. Humanity's response, though desperate, was driven by determination, ingenuity, and a deep instinct to survive. The first major confrontation came when a small squadron of fighter jets attempted to approach the fleet. At first, it seemed like humanity had a chance. The pilots communicated with precision, moving in coordinated patterns they had trained for their entire lives. But as soon as they approached, something unexpected happened. Their instruments malfunctioned. Engines lost power, and guidance systems failed. Jets dropped from the sky, forced to land, or were grounded entirely. The pilots, though skilled, realized in those moments that they were facing a foe far beyond their abilities. At the same time, naval fleets attempted to mobilize. Ships moved in formation, ready to respond if the fleet attempted to descend closer to Earth's surface. But the alien ships did not even enter the atmosphere yet. Instead, they sent energy waves that disrupted sonar and radar, making it impossible for human ships to detect their positions. Communications between vessels were cut off. Commanders realized that the alien fleet had the ability to dominate not just space, but Earth itself, without ever touching land. Scientists and strategists worked around the clock, analyzing the data. They tried to find patterns in the fleet's movements, searching for anything that might give humanity an edge. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The fleet moved like a single organism, anticipating human actions and adapting instantly. Their signals were both communication and instruction, allowing them to coordinate with precision that human technology could not match. Each attempt to counter them failed because the fleet was always one step ahead. In one underground research facility, a team of engineers and scientists gathered around a table, drawing diagrams and testing theories. They had been working for days without sleep, trying to develop a system that could even partially counter the fleet's interference. Ideas that seemed impossible in normal circumstances were now urgent. Some suggested using old-fashioned radio, frequencies that the fleet might not monitor. Others proposed unconventional energy shields that could protect small areas. Each plan was tested, failing, and being adjusted in real time. The pressure was immense, but there was no other choice. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens continued their daily lives, unaware of the full scale of the crisis. People noticed small glitches, flickering lights, phone service interruptions, or strange noises on radios, but most dismissed them as technical problems. Yet in cities and towns near key communication hubs, emergency services were quietly preparing for possible blackouts, organizing backup generators, and running simulations for worst-case scenarios. Even if most people did not know it, a global emergency was quietly unfolding. The alien fleet did not attack directly yet, but their presence alone was enough to cause fear and tension. Satellites went offline. Electrical grids fluctuated. Military systems failed. Every attempt to respond was met with immediate counteraction. Humanity's vulnerability was undeniable. Despite all of this, humans continued to try. Pilots trained in extreme scenarios attempted to maneuver their aircraft near the fleet. Engineers tried alternative communication systems. Military strategists designed contingency plans, even as they realized the likelihood of success was slim. It was not blind hope. It was determination, ingenuity, and courage in the face of impossible odds. The fleet, however, remained perfectly coordinated. Their movements were precise, almost elegant, as if they were conducting an elaborate exercise rather than a direct assault. But the subtle disruptions to human technology made it clear that the exercise was not without purpose. Humanity was being tested. Every failure, every small success, every human reaction was being recorded, analyzed, and likely used to plan the next step. In small towns and cities, people looked up at the night sky and noticed nothing unusual. Only the scientists and military personnel, watching through telescopes, radar, and specialized instruments, understood the full danger. The alien fleet, massive and intelligent, was closing in, and every move they made kept humanity guessing. By the end of the first week of open activity, it was clear. Earth was in trouble. Human defenses were failing. Communication systems were unreliable. Satellites were disabled. Fighter jets and naval forces could not reach the fleet, and yet humans refused to surrender. Scientists continued analyzing signals. Engineers built unconventional systems, and military strategists searched for patterns and weaknesses. The determination to survive, to find a way to respond, burned brighter than fear. The first real understanding began to emerge. Conventional warfare was useless. Against this fleet, humanity would need something new, something extraordinary. And while the fleet continued to demonstrate its mastery, humans began realizing that intelligence, creativity, and courage might be the tools that could turn the tide. For the first time, there was hope, not because humans had a clear plan, but because they refused to give up, even when the odds were impossible. As the fleet silently dominated space above, Earth's defenders continued their work. They repaired systems, analyzed patterns, and prepared for the first direct confrontation. Every hour brought new lessons, new failures, and small discoveries. Humanity had fallen back in the face of overwhelming power, but it had not fallen entirely. The fight for survival was only beginning, and every mind, every effort, every heartbeat counted. As the alien fleet continued to loom over Earth, paralyzing communication and military systems, humanity's leaders realized that conventional strategies were useless. Every jet, missile, and satellite attempt had failed. It became painfully clear that if humanity hoped to survive, it would need something entirely different, something that no one had ever tested in real conditions before. The answer lay in a project that had been kept secret for decades. Deep underground, in a massive hidden facility built inside mountains far from prying eyes, engineers and scientists were working on a ship unlike any other. It was enormous, sleek, and far beyond conventional design. While the world's militaries focused on missiles, jets, and satellites, this project had quietly explored possibilities that most people thought were science fiction. For decades, research had been carried out in secret. Propulsion systems that could manipulate gravity, shields capable of deflecting energy, and weapons designed using theories of physics that had never been applied in combat. Only a handful of people knew about the ship and its potential. Governments had kept it classified, fearing both panic and espionage. The ship's construction had been slow, hidden beneath the surface of the Earth, while public funds were allocated to ordinary research and defense. Most people believed it was just another experimental program, but the truth was far more significant. Humanity had been preparing for a situation like this, without even knowing it, an unprecedented threat from beyond the stars. When the alien fleet began testing Earth's defenses openly, the existence of the ship became known to global leaders. The decision to launch it was immediate, but fraught with risk. Nobody had ever piloted in a real battle. Nobody had tested its full potential against any kind of enemy. Every expert involved knew that failure could mean the loss of the entire planet. Yet hesitation was not an option. Humanity had no other choice. The crew chosen for the battleship was a mix of scientists, engineers, and military experts from around the world. They were the most skilled and courageous individuals, trained to operate a system that combined technology, strategy, and instinct. Months of secret preparation had gone into their training, simulating scenarios that were once thought impossible. Yet nothing could fully prepare them for the reality they were about to face out as the ship's launch day approached. Tension was high. The crew boarded the vessel, moving through corridors lined with blinking panels, humming engines, and equipment that seemed almost alive. They could feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. For the first time, they were not just operating a machine, they were the planet's first real line of defense against a force that humanity could barely comprehend. Outside, the alien fleet watched silently. It had been observing humanity for weeks, testing its responses, measuring weaknesses, and adapting to each attempt at defense. The fleet likely had no idea that Earth had been quietly preparing something far more advanced than anything it had encountered yet. The battleships. Designers had deliberately kept its systems hidden until the right moment. Now, with the world's survival at stake, it was time for humanity's gamble. The ship's engines roared to life, and it slowly lifted from the underground launch facility. Unlike conventional spacecraft, it moved with fluid precision, defying expectations of speed and trajectory. It emerged above the clouds, cutting through the atmosphere, its advanced shielding protecting it from electromagnetic disruptions that the alien fleet could easily generate. For the first time, a human-made craft moved into the fleet's proximity without being immediately neutralized as it approached the outer edges of the alien fleet. Observers on Earth held their breath. Telescopes and radar systems that were still functioning tracked its progress. The fleet reacted almost immediately. Smaller ships detached from the main formations and moved to intercept the battleship. But what happened next astonished everyone. The ship's shields, powered by experimental energy fields, deflected the alien interference effortlessly. Weapons that had rendered Earth's jets useless had no effect on this new vessel. Inside the battleship, the crew worked with precision, communicating silently through panels and screens. Each member knew their role. The engineers monitored energy flows, the weapons officers prepared defensive and offensive systems, and the strategists calculated enemy movements in real time. The ship was not just a tool, it was a combination of human intellect, creativity, and courage, all working in perfect harmony. The first engagement was brief, but dramatic. A small alien craft approached at high speed, expecting the same easy victory it had achieved against Earth's conventional weapons. Instead, the battleship countered, using energy beams and deflective shields in ways the alien vessel had not anticipated. Within moments, the craft was disabled, falling back toward the fleet. The impact was small compared to the scale of the alien force, but the symbolism was immense. For the first time, a human-made ship had survived and even disabled. An alien unit. Observers on Earth could hardly believe what they were seeing. The battleship was not just surviving, it was holding its own. Scientists, military leaders, and engineers watched the unfolding scene with a mix of awe and relief. Humanity's gamble had worked. The fleet had underestimated the planet's hidden capabilities, assuming Earth had no real weapon capable of challenging its power. Now, that assumption had been proven wrong. The battleship continued to move with fluid precision, striking where necessary, defending itself with shields, and constantly adapting to the fleet's tactics. The alien force, while still overwhelmingly powerful, began to react with caution. Its attacks were no longer indiscriminate. It adjusted its formations and patterns, clearly recognizing that Earth had an unexpected advantage. On board the ship, the crew felt a mixture of tension and exhilaration. Every move required concentration, teamwork, and trust. They relied not just on the ship's technology, but on each other's judgment and instincts. The battleship was a vessel of hope, a representation of what humanity could achieve when united and determined. Yet even as they celebrated small victories, they knew the fight was far from over. The fleet was massive, and a single human ship could not defeat it alone. Back on Earth, scientists and strategists continued to support the battleship. Data streams flowed from sensors and satellites that were still operational, providing guidance and tactical information. Engineers made real-time adjustments to shields and energy flows. Analysts decoded patterns in the fleet's movements, offering predictions that could save the crew from potential ambushes. It was a collaborative effort spanning the globe, uniting humanity in a single purpose: survival. The fleet, for its part, began to recognize that Earth was no longer a passive target. It had underestimated the planet's ingenuity, preparation, and courage. Its attacks became more calculated, testing the battleship while probing for weaknesses. Each encounter, though tense, provided new insights to the human crew. They learned to anticipate alien patterns, counteract interference, and strike with precision. Humanity was beginning to turn the tide, not through brute force, but through intelligence, creativity, and determination. As the sun rose and set over various parts of the world, the battleship continued its operations, moving strategically through space. On Earth, people went about their lives, still mostly unaware of the full scale of the conflict, yet relying on news of power grids holding, communications stabilizing, and satellites functioning as signs that humanity was not defenseless. The battleship had become a symbol of hope, proof that Earth could fight back even against a seemingly unstoppable opponent. The first week of active engagement showed both the challenges and possibilities ahead. Humanity had survived the initial test. The alien fleet had been disrupted, some of its units disabled, and Earth's defenders had learned that cooperation, creativity, and courage could make a difference. For the first time, there was hope, not because victory was assured, but because the battleship represented what humans could achieve when they refused to surrender. Even as the ship maneuvered, striking, defending, and gathering intelligence, the stakes remained unimaginably high. The alien fleet was massive, and the battleship alone could not destroy it. Yet it had proven one undeniable truth: humanity was no longer helpless. For the first time, the alien invaders had met resistance they could not instantly overwhelm. And as long as humans remained united, inventive, and determined, the fight for survival had just begun. This moment marked a turning point. The secret battleship, long hidden, had become humanity's first real hope. It was a reminder that preparation, courage, and ingenuity could challenge even the most advanced forces. The war was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, people who had been watching the conflict hidden in command centers, research labs, and underground facilities allowed themselves to believe that humanity could survive. The ship moved silently, efficiently, and powerfully. Its crew, fully aware of the stakes, continued to work as one. Each maneuver, each strike, each calculation was critical. They knew the alien fleet would not relent, that more challenges were ahead. But they also knew something that the invaders had not anticipated. Earth would fight, and humanity would adapt. And in that quiet determination, deep in the vastness of space, hope was born. The alien fleet had dominated Earth for weeks, moving with silent precision, testing defenses, and disrupting technology at will. Humanity's military, communication, and satellite systems had failed repeatedly. Every conventional attack had been neutralized before it could even reach the fleet. The world had been living under an invisible shadow, unsure if survival was even possible. Yet in the midst of despair, the secret human battleship emerged, a vessel unlike anything the aliens had encountered. And it was about to change everything. The Battleship moved through space with an almost eerie grace. Its engines hummed quietly, energy shields glowing faintly against the darkness. From the perspective of the alien fleet, it appeared insignificant at first, just one small ship among countless earthly defenses that had already failed. But the crew aboard the ship knew that this was their moment. Every maneuver, every calculation, every decision would determine whether humanity could finally take the fight to a force that had seemed unstoppable. As the battleship drew closer to the fleet, the alien vessels began to react. Smaller crafts detached from their parent ships, moving to intercept. They assumed it would be an easy victory, the same kind they had won against fighter jets and missiles countless times before. They did not know the battleship's true capabilities. They had never seen a human vessel like this, one built with intelligence, adaptability, and courage at its core. The first encounter was immediate and intense. Alien craft fired energy beams that had disabled conventional human technology in the past. Yet the battleship's shields held firm. The crew worked in perfect coordination, monitoring the energy flows, adjusting the shields, and preparing their own countermeasures. Every strike from the aliens was met with a calculated response. The ship moved unpredictably, forcing the alien attackers to overshoot and miscalculate. For the first time, the aliens were not in complete control. Inside the ship, the crews. Hearts raced. Engineers monitored shield levels, weapons officers aimed experimental energy projectiles, and strategists predicted alien movements in real time. They worked as one, relying not only on the technology, but on each other's instincts. Every action was a blend of science, courage, and human intuition. This was a fight unlike any before, a battle where adaptability mattered as much as raw power. Then came the moment that would shift the entire conflict. The battleship launched its first offensive strike, using energy systems that the aliens had never encountered. Beams of focused energy cut through the space between ships, disabling a small alien craft in seconds. The alien fleet had underestimated humans, assuming that no vessel from Earth could survive or fight back. Now, their assumptions were shattered. The alien response was immediate. Larger vessels moved in formation, aiming to overwhelm the battleship with sheer numbers. Their attacks were swift and precise, designed to crush resistance before it could gain momentum. Yet the human crew adapted. They altered course, anticipating patterns in the alien strategy. Shields fluctuated, absorbing attacks at critical points, while offensive weapons struck with precision. Every move was a lesson learned from past failures, applied in real time to outmaneuver the enemy. On Earth, the world's remaining operational satellites and radar systems tracked the unfolding battle. Scientists and military strategists watched, in awe as the once overwhelming fleet struggled to counter a single human ship. The battleship was not just surviving, it was holding its own, and in some moments, dominating. Observers realized that Earth had finally discovered a way to fight back, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, creativity, and courage. The turning point came when the battleship executed a maneuver no one had dared to attempt. Using its experimental propulsion system, it darted between two larger alien vessels, appearing in an unexpected location almost instantaneously. The aliens fired at the wrong coordinates, leaving one of their own ships exposed. With perfect timing, the battleship struck, disabling a major vessel and forcing others to retreat temporarily. For the first time, humanity had inflicted real damage on the fleet. Inside the alien command structure. If they could understand humans as a single intelligence, there must have been confusion. Their opponents were adaptive, unpredictable, and resilient. Each attempt to strike was met with an unexpected countermeasure. The fleet had never faced an enemy that could learn and react so quickly, and it became clear that the humans were more than just a primitive species. They were a threat that could not be ignored. The battleship's crew, continued to push forward, striking decisively while defending against overwhelming odds. The ship moved like a living organism, its crew anticipating attacks, conserving energy, and using every system at their disposal to maximum effect. Smaller alien craft, once confident, were now retreating or being disabled. The tides of battle had begun to shift, not because the battleship was stronger, but because it was smarter and faster than its opponent expected. The impact on Earth's leaders and scientists was profound. For weeks, humanity had watched helplessly as the fleet dominated, its presence a constant reminder of vulnerability. Now, for the first time, there was hope. The battleship had proven that survival was possible and that the alien fleet could be challenged. The victory was not complete, but the psychological effect was immense. Humans realized that they were no longer powerless. They could fight back and, with intelligence and coordination, even win. The battleship continued to engage. Multiple enemy units simultaneously, its crew operating with extraordinary focus. Engineers rerouted energy to strengthen shields in moments of crisis. Weapons officers fired with exact timing, exploiting openings that had been observed and calculated. Strategists adjusted maneuvers on the fly, predicting the alien fleet's responses with increasing accuracy. It was a perfect example of human ingenuity and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. As the battle wore on, smaller alien ships began to fall back, regrouping under the protection of larger vessels. The fleet, though still dominant in numbers, had lost its initial confidence. Humans were no longer easy prey. Every new engagement carried risk, but the battleship had demonstrated that a single human vessel, with intelligence and courage, could disrupt their plans. On board the ship, the crew felt both exhaustion and exhilaration. Every system had been pushed to its limit, every calculation mattered, and every moment could have been the last. Yet despite the fear, there was a growing sense of purpose. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. The fleet had underestimated what humans were capable of, and that underestimation could now be the key to survival. Even as the alien fleet began to retreat temporarily, the battleship's crew remained vigilant. They knew that this was only the beginning. The aliens were intelligent and adaptive. They would return, stronger and more prepared. But for the first time, humans had the advantage of knowledge. They had learned how the fleet moved, how it reacted, and most importantly, that it could be challenged. Earth's remaining command centers tracked every movement, relaying data to the battleship when possible. Scientists analyzed energy signatures, looking for patterns in alien technology. Military strategists suggested new maneuvers, feeding ideas directly to the ship's crew. Humanity's fight had become a global effort, with every mind focused on a single goal, survival and victory. The turning point of the battle marked a new era. Humanity had discovered a strength that the aliens had not anticipated: adaptability, courage, and intelligence applied with precision. The fleet, once unstoppable, was now cautious. Their attacks were measured, their formations less confident. The human battleship had forced them to reconsider, proving that even the most advanced force could be challenged when intelligence met bravery. As the day ended, the battleship maneuvered back towards safer positions, shields still active and systems holding steady. The crew, though exhausted, allowed themselves a moment of relief. They had survived the first true engagement, inflicted damage on the alien fleet, and most importantly demonstrated that humanity was not powerless. On Earth, scientists and leaders shared the news cautiously. While the full scale of the battle remained secret to the public, those in command centers allowed themselves hope. Humanity had a chance. The fleet could be challenged. And with strategy, intelligence, and courage, survival was possible. The battleship's victory was small in comparison to the size of the alien fleet, but its significance was enormous. It marked the moment when humans had first taken control of their fate in a conflict that had seemed hopeless. The turning point had arrived, not through superior numbers, but through superior thinking, planning, and the courage to act when it mattered most. And in that silent void of space, as the battleship moved steadily among the stars, humanity realized something powerful. The fight was far from over, but now, for the first time, they had a reason to believe they could win. The alien fleet had been dominant for weeks, a silent, overwhelming presence in the skies above Earth. It had tested every defense humanity had, disabled satellites, disrupted communications, and caused fear in the hearts of leaders and scientists. Alike, the world had seemed powerless, unable to stop a force far superior in technology and strategy. But now, the human battleship had changed the course of the conflict. It had survived, fought back, and even damaged parts of the fleet. The balance of fear was beginning to shift as the battleship moved into position for the next phase of engagement. The crew felt the weight of the moment. Every eye on the ship's command panels was focused, every hand ready to act. They knew the fleet would respond with everything it had. It was not enough to survive small encounters. This was the moment to push the aliens back, to show that humanity could fight and survive. Every maneuver mattered. Every decision could save lives or end them. The alien fleet, sensing the human ship's growing confidence, began to react. Larger ships formed protective formations around smaller craft, moving with increased coordination. The aliens no longer treated the battleship as a minor annoyance. They were aware, now, that humans were a real threat. Energy waves and advanced weapons targeted the vessel, attempting to overwhelm it. For the first time, the fleet used all its power against a single target. Fully testing humanity's ingenuity. Inside the battleship, the crew worked as a single organism. Engineers monitored the shields, redirecting energy where needed. Weapons officers fired precise energy beams, striking at weak points detected in the alien formations. Strategists calculated enemy movement and predicted attacks before they arrived. It was a battle of intelligence and adaptation, not just raw power. The crew had learned from weeks of engagement and failure, turning those lessons into strength. As the battle intensified, smaller alien ships tried to flank the battleship, hoping to isolate it and destroy it quickly. But the human crew anticipated this. The ship shifted unexpectedly, using its advanced propulsion to appear in new positions in moments. Alien weapons missed, their targets moving faster than expected. Then, with careful timing, the battleship launched a counterattack, striking multiple alien vessels at once. Several ships were disabled, drifting helplessly as energy systems shut down. The alien command structure, if it could understand humans as a single intelligence, must have been confused. One ship alone was now holding back multiple units of the fleet, striking with precision, adapting faster than the aliens expected. They had underestimated humanity, assuming that technological superiority would guarantee victory. The battleship proved them wrong. Back on Earth, those monitoring the battle held their breath. Telescopes and operational satellites captured glimpses of the engagement. Scientists and military strategists analyzed every move, feeding real-time data to the ship. This was the first time humanity was actively coordinating its defense and offense on a global scale. For the first time, hope was not just a feeling, it was strategy in motion. The battleship's crew knew that the alien fleet was intelligent, adaptive, and relentless. Yet they had also learned that the fleet could be surprised. The key was unpredictability. By moving in ways the aliens could not anticipate and striking at precise moments, the humans could level the playing field. The first week of engagements had taught them everything they needed. Speed, coordination, and boldness could overcome raw power. Then came the decisive moment. The fleet's largest vessels, intended to crush the human ship, advanced in formation. The crew of the battleship had one chance. Using experimental energy systems, it created a surge of focused energy that disrupted the alien formation. Smaller ships were disabled first, creating chaos among the fleet. The largest vessels attempted to compensate, but the human ships, unpredictable movements and strategic strikes kept them off balance. For the first time, the alien fleet hesitated. Their attacks were no longer perfectly coordinated. Confusion spread through their formation. The human battleship, capitalizing on this moment, struck key points in the enemy formation, disabling several more ships. Energy beams, shields, and advanced propulsion worked together in a seamless display of human ingenuity. The aliens had underestimated a single vessel, and it was now proving that even overwhelming power could be countered by intelligence, courage, and adaptation. On Earth, global leaders watched quietly, amazed. For weeks they had felt helpless. Now, for the first time, they saw a reason to believe. The battleship was not just surviving, it was winning engagements. Humanity had demonstrated that even a species facing technologically superior enemies could fight back when intelligence and determination were applied effectively. The alien fleet, realizing the severity of the situation, began to retreat. Their advanced technology allowed them to withdraw quickly, but the retreat was not complete disorganization. They moved strategically, likely regrouping to reassess the human threat. For the first time, they had been surprised by human strategy, adaptability, and courage. The lesson was clear. Earth was not defenseless. Humans were no longer predictable prey. The battleship, while victorious in this engagement, did not pursue recklessly. The crew understood the aliens were adaptive, and pushing too far could provoke a more devastating response. Instead, they held position, observing, analyzing, and learning. Every engagement had provided new insights into the alien technology and tactics. Humanity had discovered that knowledge, creativity, and courage could level the playing field even against overwhelming power. Back on Earth, scientists, engineers, and military strategists began planning future actions. The battle had shown that the alien fleet could be challenged, that weaknesses existed, and that humans could exploit them. Coordination between global teams increased, with data shared in real time to support the battleship and any future operations. Humanity's confidence, once fragile, was now growing. They were no longer entirely at the mercy of a superior force dot in the days following the battle. Smaller alien units continued to probe Earth's defenses, but the effectiveness of their attacks had decreased. The battleship's presence alone had changed the dynamic. Humans were now prepared, adaptive, and ready to respond with intelligence and courage. Every previous failure had been a lesson, every small success a building block. Humanity had proven it could survive, adapt, and fight back. The crew of the battleship remained vigilant. They knew that the fleet would return, likely stronger and more cautious. But they also knew something vital. Humanity had shown that it could challenge a seemingly invincible force. This knowledge was more powerful than any weapon. It was proof that courage, intelligence, and collaboration could achieve what raw technology alone could not. The world, though largely unaware of the full scale of the conflict, began to feel subtle changes. Communications stabilized, some satellites returned online, and power grids remained functional. The alien fleet's retreat, though quiet and strategic, allowed humanity to rebuild, prepare, and strengthen defenses. The psychological impact was enormous. Humans were no longer passive observers. They were active participants in the fight for survival, in the final moments of the engagement. The battleship held its position, observing the alien retreat. Its crew allowed themselves a brief moment of pride, knowing that their efforts had changed the course of history. They had faced an overwhelmingly powerful enemy and had survived. They had fought with intelligence, courage, and determination. And in doing so, they had shown the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated. The alien fleet, moving away from Earth, had been taught a vital lesson. Humans were adaptable, intelligent, and courageous. The world they had assumed would be easy prey had proven capable of surviving, learning, and responding. The fleet would likely return, but it would do so with caution, knowing that Earth was no longer defenseless. For humanity, the battle marked a turning point. The secret battleship had not only defended the planet, but had also inspired hope, courage, and unity. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists realized that their combined efforts could overcome challenges once thought impossible. Ordinary people, though unaware of the full conflict, benefited from the restored systems and the knowledge that humanity had survived the first true test. The battleship continued to patrol near the edge of the fleet's retreat, gathering intelligence, maintaining shields, and ensuring that Earth remained protected. Its crew, while tired, remained alert, knowing that the universe still held unknown threats. Yet even in exhaustion, they carried pride and hope. Humanity had faced the impossible and survived. For the first time, the species understood that courage, intelligence, and determination were as powerful as any weapon. As the days passed, Earth began to recover from the initial shock. Leaders used the lessons learned to strengthen defenses. Scientists studied alien technology through observations, and the battleship remained ready to protect the planet. Humanity had survived the first great test, and although the war was far from over, they had proven that they could fight, adapt, and endure. And in the quiet moments, looking at the stars from the decks of the battleship or through telescopes, on Earth, people realized something profound. Humanity was no longer the passive observer of the universe. They were survivors, fighters, and learners.